What's up, everybody? This is Matt with PowerShift, and it's been a while. So I decided we were going to go ahead and film today. It's been a minute since we put out some content. Right away, I've been getting so many questions about my Mirage, and I guess let's just delve right into that. As you can see, there's no Mitsubishi Mirage out here. Approximately 4 months ago, I was involved in a pretty rough rear-end collision. I had a lady slam into me. I was at a red light, and it totaled out the Mirage. So, unfortunately, that car is no longer with me. I mean, it was sad to lose a daily driver that I was counting on for the last several years, but it is what it is. With that out of the way, you might be asking yourself, what is this? And this is a 2011 Mazda Miata Sport. Now, kind of the premise of the video today is to delve into the car, kind of go through it, and take down the old adage that Miata is always the answer, but should it be? And with that in mind, let's roll right on into it. This car here, I bought back in December with 22,000 miles on the clock. Pretty much drove it 300 miles and had to park it for winter. And in those 300 miles, I wasn't necessarily at that point sure that I was sold on the car based on how everybody always talks about these. You know, there's really no need to beat the dead horse. We know that these cars aren't fast. They're known for their handling, they're known for their agility, and they have a very cult-like following. Now for me, I kind of look at it through a different frame. When I look at the Miata, at the end of the day, it's quite literally it's a roadster. It's not a sports car. It's not intended to be any type of grand touring car. Nothing of the like. When Mazda introduced the NA Miata, it pretty much took the world by storm. Before that, you had the Fiat 124, you had the Alfa Romeo Spider, you had the Triumph Spitfire, kind of all those old cars like that had encompassed the open-air motoring, the roadster cachet, if you will. Now, this car here, I had paid $13,800 for, with the lower miles on it, and ironically, the values of Miatas, they keep soaring up. So we're going to kind of compare it to cars within that price range you could get today. Right now, a lot of these cars are booking $15,000, $17,000. So let's go ahead and expand on that. Again, Miata is always the answer, as they say. So E46 M3, one of the biggest BMW legends and icons of all time. 333 horsepower, inline six, that legendary S54 motor, 6-speed manual, absolutely amazing car. Reliability can be a little hit or miss with rod bearings, vanos. We all know the story with those, but considered to be one of the true pure form sports cars. Then you have cars like the Audi TT that would compare with this, and that obviously is a front engine. You can get them front wheel drive, or you can obviously get the good one, and that would be the Quattro, the 225 with the 1.8T. They are significantly cheaper than the Miatas, but because they're older. But at the time, a lot of people kind of used to draw that parallel between the Miata and the TT, and I'm going to tell you why they're wrong. The Audi TT, while it is a roadster, when you think of a roadster, what comes to mind? Kind of what we just hit on a minute ago. Obviously, the roof needs to be able to go down, and it should be a two-seater. Obviously, the rear-wheel drive aspect, to me, is hugely important, and it should be athletic. It should handle extremely well. The Audi TTs do handle well, subjectively speaking. They plow, they just don't have that dartiness, that eagerness to turn in like these Miatas do. Now the E46 M3 offers that with some drawbacks. Number one, that's a 3,400 pound car, and this is a 2,400 pound car. The Audi TT, it's also a fatty. They're up there in weight, but still one of my all-time favorite used car values. The Audi TTs in general, I think, are amazing. Then you have the king of the hill, the Honda S2000, with the F20C, 240 horsepower, relatively lightweight, amazing good looks. There's not really a lot to say there. It is kind of the king of the castle when it comes to these roadster type cars that you might be able to get into affordably. And I think a lot of those are really going to jump up in value. You would never hear me dogging on an S2000. They do have their issues as well. Transmissions, diffs, they're fairly weak. But it would not stop me from owning one of those cars. So let's delve in with kind of some of the ups and downs of owning a Miata. This one here again is a 2011. And starting in the year 2009, Mazda decided, after seeing some rod failures on early MZR engines, these have the 2-liter MZR rated right at about, I believe it's 176 horsepower, somewhere within that region. So on the 2009s and up, with a manual only, they had a forged rotating assembly within the motor, so your rods, your pistons, everything there's forged. You had a higher red line. If you get an automatic, you might as well throw that right out the window. And I mean, I'm not going to bully anybody, but why would you buy an automatic Miata? To me, I can't understand how that even makes sense. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into that. And first of all, reliability. These cars are super reliable if you get the newer ones with the forged engines. The early cars did have some rod failures. They're known to make some noise with the VVT solenoid. All your MZRs were known for that. The newer ones seem to have addressed that. They didn't have the coil pack wiring issues of the early cars. But that's not to say these cars are perfect, because they aren't. The clutch pedal in these is known to break at the bracket, and you got to re-weld it. I haven't had that failure, knock on wood. This car has been well taken care of. Now, the coolant expansion tanks basically have 100% fail rate. They're plastic, they start to turn yellow, they explode, and if you overheat one of these engines, it's game over. So right away I put a Moroso billet aluminum tank in its place. And then I've done all the fluids and associated maintenance to get it up to my snuff. And again, that's not to say things are perfect, because they aren't. Number one of the biggest problems with the Miata, right here, that top goes out. If it gets a tear, anything happens to that top, you can buy one from Robbins, and in my opinion, buy the canvas. All your Miatas here, they have the vinyl top. They're easy to take care of, but they're not very forgiving either. You go to lower it when it's real cold outside, it's extremely stiff, and you could most certainly tear it. I believe they're $600 or $800 from Robbins, and I'm told it's 10 to 14 hours labor to change it. I wouldn't even know where to start, so I'd be paying somebody. Knock on wood again, I take really good care of the stop. I'm always putting protectant on it, but not all Miata owners are so lucky. So if something goes out with that top, it's going to hurt a little bit. As far as the powertrain itself, this car is a sport, meaning it has a 5-speed manual. Tourings, Grand Tourings, clubs, 6-speed manuals, you can get in those. With those 6-speed cars, from what I've heard, the transmission is a little bit weaker than the 5-speed. I can't personally speak to that. I know that I drive this car aggressively, and I have the correct modifications to the car to be able to handle it, but it's been really good. I haven't really had any issues out of it. So on the 5 speeds, you do get one less gear, but it's said to be stronger. You still get that forged engine on your 09 and ups. If you stepped into the club, I believe they had the more aggressive Bilstein suspension. It was a little bit lower. This is not stock, what you're seeing here. We'll get into that here in a couple minutes. But from a reliability standpoint, the Miata, it trumps the Audi TT. It trumps the BMW M3. It trumps all those cars in that regard. That's about where we leave it, because the Miata is a great driver's car, but it is a terrible car. You might be asking yourself, well, why is it a terrible car? Well, let's go ahead and... Alright, so you heard me say it's a terrible car. And it is. It truly is. First of all, this car is on coilovers. I have it on Tane Flex Z's. Lowered about, I believe it's between 1.9 and 2.2 inches, pretty much front to rear, leveled out. Nathan, shout out to him. He went ahead and did the install, and I think he's nailed it. Obviously, it's sitting on the RPF1 wheels, Michelin PS4S tires, 225 45 17. So, the problem this car has isn't handling, it isn't the driving experience. It is just driving it. Number one, I wear a size 13.5. I got some big feet. So just getting in this car in general is kind of hilarious when you're a man of my stature. Long-time viewers will remember when I was well over 300 pounds. I'm sitting here at 150, and it's still kind of a little bit of a tight fit in this car. First of all, let's go ahead and drop the roof. A lot of people seem to like the rooftop operations on YouTube. So what you do is there's a latch in here, there's a button that says release, and you pull it down, and this will get you to this point. Make sure your windows are down. So at that point, you heard me release that latch. Take your hand right here. This is a Z folding top. Close your latch, press down, tip up your wind deflector. We just went from a coupe to a roadster that fast. Now, first things first, as you can see, got a little bit of a high sill, so when I go to put in some more aggressive seats, it'll get even more fun. But when I swing my legs in with my shoes on, the problem you actually have, look how tight that pedal box is, if you can see that in the shot. Quite literally, my heels touch, my toes touch, all of that touches. So I have to drive this car barefoot. So when I drive it to work in work boots, I kind of look silly when I pull up and I throw my boots outside of the car and then I'm slipping them back on. Not very practical whatsoever. Also not practical, some of the mods I've done. These solid door bushings, which everybody with Miatas knows about them. You gotta slam the door like you hate it, otherwise it doesn't close. I shall demonstrate. This is a medium effort door close. Still open. So that's something you have to deal with. Another thing, there is next to no storage in this car that makes any sense. So if you have a phone, we're recording on an iPhone 11 Pro Max right now. There is literally nowhere in this interior to comfortably put your phone. And since there's no CarPlay, not even Bluetooth on this car, when you want to reference your map, it's literally your phone is sitting on your lap, which is not necessarily legal. That's problem one. And you would think that, hey, you have this door storage. That net is not going to fit any modern phone. You get two cup holders. I don't know why they're there, but what I do know is they are absolutely abysmal. They don't hold anything. And if you put, let's say, like a Monster Energy drink in there and you corner hard, it's coming right back out. Don't ask me how I know. Another problem with the Mazda Miata. The radio is atrocious. If you have the top down, you can crank it pretty much as loud as you want and it will just start to garble and not sound real great. And it has noise, but it's not necessarily a pleasant noise. So bank on upgrading your stereo equipment in these cars. With that being said, they give you a little roll top storage, which I usually store my sunglasses in a COVID mask because, you know, we are in a pandemic. So I tend to keep my mask, my sunglasses in there. You have a glove box that's actually fairly big for the car. You can store quite a bit, but the secret weapon to Miata ownership lies right here, and that's your center storage. And there's enough room to put your wallet, stow away your phone if you're not going to be needing it, and also it encompasses the release for the fuel door. If you look anywhere in here, and I'll be taking the recording device in a minute and I'll show you a POV of all the buttons in here. But there's no immediately obvious way to fuel this car up. When I first bought it, I had to Google it. There's a little tool right here, and that's what actually releases it. And it's the same story with the top. Right here between your twin mounted speakers, pull that latch and that releases the top to close it back. This car, as I've said, does have some modifications. It has a Tomei titanium exhaust. It has a, we won't talk about it, modified mid-pipe. Tane Z flex coilovers, these wheels and tires. I have some additional engine mounts on here. It's tastefully modified. So as much as this car is not practical, and as much fun as it is, this should not be your number one car. This should not be your only car. Right now, it is my only operational car. That could be a problem. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and take a listen to how this car sounds. One of the greatest attributes of these engines is the sound. I know a lot of people are like, shut up and fire it up already, so here we go. Cold start. It's not over the top, sounds pretty good to me, and you'll hear it when we get driving. Sounds pretty good, crackles, does everything a sports car should. But we're not talking about sports cars because the Miata isn't one. It's also, again, not any type of grand touring car. It's not really even a good car. What this essentially is a toy. That's all it is. Let's go ahead and take a look in the trunk. As you hit your head on your the front of it because it is so tiny and tight in here. The trunk is absolutely hysterically bad. That's what you get. So when you go grocery shopping with your NC Mazda Miata, this is what you get. There is about enough room to fit 3 12-packs in here of soda, of course. We're not condoning alcohol. But you can fit about 3 12-packs, maybe enough clothes for like a weekend getaway. I know I had a real hard time fitting some clothes in here and my toolbox taking this up to Nathan's. Absolutely no space in this car for storage. And it makes that hilarious sound when you close it. So that's kind of one of the other things. So let's go ahead and let's come over to this side. Then we'll pop the hood, we'll kind of go under it. Another problem. I'm just right under 6'1". As you can see, the roll bar is basically level with the seat. So if you're actually sitting up driving aggressively, look at me. I am the roll bar now. And that's pretty much how it is. That's what you have to do. You can buy the Hard Dog or the Blackbird Fabworks or Z-Bar, which is one of my next mods for this car. Because I don't like being decapitated. And I know I kind of contrive spiritedly, and God forbid I put it on its lid, well, I won't have a lid anymore. And that's the true reality of owning a Miata. So don't skimp out and don't be one of those dudes that puts style bars on. Friends don't let friends rock style bars. Anyhow, with that out of the way, let's take a look under the hood real quick. Don't mind the fact that the car is very dirty. I wash it religiously. It's ceramic coated. I can't keep this thing clean. I don't own a garage here. But under the hood's another story. I keep this fairly clean. This is the 2-liter MZR engine. You might know the MZR from the Mazda Speed 3, the Mazda Speed 6, those cars. To my understanding, it's based on the Duratec. Like, I apologize, there's a lot going on behind me. But it's kind of based on the Duratec, and a lot of guys do the 2.5 swap to these. It's not something I'm going to be entertaining. I like this engine as is. But 7,800 RPM redline, give or take. Good amount of torque, thanks to that super short gearing. 75 mile an hour, you're cruising 3,600 RPMs in your top gear. But the engine loves it. doesn't seem to complain too much about it. And that's what it looks like. That's your VVT there. I have this additional engine mount to actually stop the engine from twisting on the transmission. The infamous coolant tanks that fail on these, you should always go ahead and just replace them with that. You can see the hats to the tang coilovers. Fairly easy vehicle to work on. Everything's readily accessible. And maintenance costs aren't real high with this car, honestly. Timing chain, not a belt. So not something you really got to sit there and worry about like the older NAs that were belt driven. Same with our DSMs. You know, you got to stay up with those timing belt intervals. So it's not exactly the legendary S54 that you would find in the E46 M3, and it's not the tuner favorite 180 you would get in the VAG products, but these are immensely tunable. Superchargers pick up 130, 140 wheel for right about $4,000. Headers pick up quite a bit of power on these. They respond very well to modification. And I can also tell you, it is one of the best sounding cars I've owned that is not powered by a rotary engine. But again, not everything's perfect. When you go out to buy a car, you have to ask yourself, and you have to be real with yourself, what are my needs? I bought this car when I still had the Mirage as a toy. Obviously, we've established the Mirage got totaled. It is now my daily driver. And I am loving daily driving it. The problem is my camera woman is my fiance, and I also have an 8-year-old. And as you can see, I have 2 seats, but I have 3 bodies. That's a very large problem. Welcome to Miata ownership. Another problem. Fuel economy is not great, believe it or not. I get about 27, and that's me running the cruise, running 75 mile an hour. It is what it is. With an Audi TT, you're going to get well above that. With the BMW M3, you're probably going to get right there if you're not driving it like a complete maniac, I'll say. You know, we try to not curse on this channel. Anyway, you have to be very realistic about what you want to buy. Do you want a sports car? If so, the BMW M3 is an excellent answer. The Audi RS4s used, obviously, those are pretty stout. They don't have the timing chain issues like the S4s had. One of my all-time favorite cars, and it's always going to be one. Any of the Evos, I've seen some of the Evo 8s with some higher miles, maybe not in the greatest shape, for under $20,000. That makes a compelling case. Legendary engine, 4 doors, all-wheel drive, winter practicality. You can have it all with those cars, almost. So that brings me to the counterpoint right here. BMW M3, the Audi S4, the Audi TT, the Honda S2000. We'll go ahead and we'll rope in the Mercedes SLK. I think that's a fairly comprehensive list of cars you could buy within the price range of this. And those cars are the jack of all trades, but the master of none. And the Mazda Miata is the jack of no trades, but it is the master of one. All right, here's the interior shot. Again, I apologize, it's dirty. I sweep it out constantly, but with where I work and I do drive it open top a lot, there's the pedal situation. If you got bigger feet, you're probably going to be barefooting this. Your airbag disable, and down here is your trunk and your hood release. But as you can see, the radio is very Spartan. There's just not a great deal of options to be had there. This one does not appear to have the Bose radio. Obviously, the shift knob and everything is aftermarket. But all in all, I find the interior of this car to be very nice. It's very well laid out, and it is comfortable once you kind of, dare I say, fall into it. Driving. That is where this car is the master. It's the master of that one trade. Not driving to the grocery store, but actual driving. Now granted, it is nice to take this to the store, And it is nice to drive it to work. This car, quite literally, can turn a commute to work into your own private autocross. Now, I don't encourage breaking of any laws because I wouldn't do that. But you can have fun at real low speeds with a car like this. A lot of fun. So right now, we're just driving through town. I'm gonna go ahead and get it out here, make a couple corners, get on it, maybe do a pull. One of the best shifter feels in the industry with this car. Truly amazing. Tactile, you can feel the click in the gates. There's really never a question of what gear you're in, especially when you have a taller shifter. The stock shift knob's actually really nicely weighted and it's fairly heavy. This one's quite light, but that's not a problem. You don't really need a heavy knob if you have a good transmission. This is not a good transmission, it's a great one. Absolutely one of the best. Also, it's fun just having the top down. I mean, after all, that's what we're doing, right? You buy this car to do this thing. You wouldn't buy a Glock to go bear hunting, and you wouldn't buy a Miata to not use the top. A little bit of a pull there. A gentleman in a Corvette gave us a nice little greeting. Truly a fun car right here, though. Yeah, it's not as fast as, let's say, a BMW M3. It's not even as fast as a 370Z. It is what it is. The older Miatas, the NAs, were absolutely biblically slow. These don't have that issue as bad. It's only about 150 pounds over in NA, but you're almost doubling horsepower. So you're going from like the 103 or 105 of an NA right up to almost 180. And all in all, that has a profound effect on performance. It also has a profound effect on just living with it. I mean, the Mirage, you pretty much had to gut stomp that car everywhere you went just to keep up with traffic. And in this, you don't. It has a lot of torque. I mean, I'm in third right now. I'm going 20. And it just does the thing. That's what it does. So let's go ahead and let's get it out here. Let's get it up to a little bit of speed. Maybe hit a couple curves. The shifter is just one of my favorite. Absolutely amazing. Hopefully this man does not run me over. That's the other problem with the Miata. You might as well treat yourself like nobody sees you, because apparently they don't. It feels so much fun just to wind it out, taking it up to red line, banging the gears. Not no lifting, but just banging the gears. After all, this is a car meant to be driven spiritedly. Another thing I want to comment on right away: handling, ride, NVH. Let's break that down. Obviously, this car is on a set of RPF 1s because, you know, that's what you do when you have a Miata. You chuck some light wheels on it, and you chuck some sticky tires. These Pilot Sport 4S's, pretty much as good as it gets when it comes to tire, grip, performance, and I'll use the word predictability as a known quantity based on what you buy. So I went ahead and I bought the best available. That makes this car absolutely insanely well poised in terms of handling. Steering feedback might as well be telepathic. I know exactly what's going on through the steering wheel at all times. With the coilovers on the car, it really changed everything. Initially, I'd said this car had an amazing suspension on it. I really thought it did. Then I put sticky tires on it. And before the car, on my Pirellis, stock size Pirellis, the car loved to drift. It would try to kill you. Then once I stuck these on here, it was quite the opposite. I started actually getting understeer, body roll. Well, now I don't have that problem either, believe it or not. And I'm sure Lindsay here will attest, this car rides better on the tame suspension, for sure.
Yes.
So all in all, when it comes to the livability aspect, yes, the car does ride good. Obviously, it's a Miata. It handles good. That's what it's supposed to do. One thing I'm going to go ahead and say, though, about the handling prowess of this car, it has a very dry sense of humor, and it does not understand sarcasm. What I mean by that is that if you mess up, give it too much steering correction, not enough, it's going to take you exactly at face value. And that's what it's going to do. First night I had this car, I had it slide out at a real high speed right-hander, and I had to use the whole road to recover it. I used just the right amount of steering and I was fine. A little bit more and we would have definitely, we'd have been hurt. Let's just say that. This car doesn't take a lot of steering effort to do anything. I'm driving one-handed right now and I may be moving the wheel 2 degrees and I could change lanes. It's very dirty without a doubt. In a couple weeks, I'm going to be having the car corner balanced and fully aligned. I can't say enough good about the handling. Also, the factory brakes. These cars were RX-8 platforms. So the brakes, they're quite good. They stop, and they stop right now. No problems there at all. I really wish we weren't in a construction zone, but we are. Let's go ahead and let's go this way. We've never been this way. I don't know what it is.
It's a nice back road. I took my bike down this way.
Wind it out. It loves it. I don't know this road. I have no idea where any curves might be. But I never worry about that in this car. Because at the end of the day, this is what we do. I'm not sure if you're getting any wind noise coming through the video. That's part of life with a convertible. Wind deflector does help, but you definitely get a lot of nice open air. And that'll, I guess, kind of bring me to another point. Kind of going back to ride, and it's actually more of a chassis remark. The chassis with the Delrin door bushings, some of the bracing I've done, it's very, very stiff. So yes, without a doubt, the car, theoretically could be a little harsh. I don't mind it. I actually think it rides better than my stock Veloster I had. That was before any mods to that one. As far as NVH, it's a Miata. What does that mean? The whole car is a rattle trap, and that's... You're not buying a Porsche 911 Cabriolet here, guys. And gals. You're not getting a Porsche. You're not getting an Alfa Romeo, because this actually runs. Sorry to my Alfisti out there. But you're not getting that level of luxury, refinement. It's not what this is for. You go buy a sniper rifle, you don't really necessarily expect it to do some of the same things that you can do with just a good old Ruger 1022, right? You buy it for a purpose. Essentially, this car is the sniper rifle of the car community. It doesn't do many things real well, but the things that it does great, and we'll kind of go ahead. Oh, speaking of Porsche 911s, that was the sound of a 996 911 non-turbo, kind of giving it the beans. Where are we? It's almost like we just kind of did a dog leg or something. Actually, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to turn it right back around. Yeah, when I tell you the transmission's good, yeah, transmission's good. Real good. Now, I wouldn't do that all the time, because obviously that is abusive. But I kind of whipped it. A little bit of a drift, a little bit of a correction needed type of maneuver there. And that's what I mean. We didn't break any speed limit laws right there. Not at all. 35 mile an hour, the legal speed limit.
Besides the illegal U-turn.
So, no, we definitely may or may not have went over the posted speed limit, but that's what I mean. This car converts the drive into a private autocross. You're not going to fit a lot of people. It's cramped in here, and it is what it is. I'll actually have her kind of take the phone down now and kind of give you a little bit of a POV of what you kind of see from my end. Yeah, you can go ahead and pull it down. We are not a high production value, studio here. So these are your obvious gauges. You got your oil pressure, your fuel gauge, RPM, tach, we'll call it tach, not RPM. Now I sound like Supercar Blondie. But basic gauge stack layout, everything's very ergonomic. Your hand has no choice but to fall directly to the shifter. It's an extremely comfortable drive. It really is. Until you have to do it about 6 hours at a time. The seats aren't bad. Oh, they can be a little better. Steering wheel's nice, but it can be D-shaped. Now, I'm not a big guy, but it's barely clearing my thighs here, and I don't exactly have large thighs. So, a couple things like that does kind of hurt the practicality of the car. Like, I do have my shoes on, and I'm already regretting not kicking them off. But I'm not going to hate on it for that. It's a tiny car. You kind of know what you're getting into. Kind of doing the drive back home, and I'll remark about a couple other things. Perception. What do I mean by that? Well, how do other people perceive the car? I have gotten quite a bit of love with this car. Nobody's ever really, aside from the obvious Miata jokes, this car tends to get a lot of compliments. And other Miata guys, they tend to kind of give it a wave. It's not going to break necks like if I was rolling through here in, let's say, a Ferrari 488. But it definitely will get you noticed. Without a doubt, people notice it. You don't really fly under the radar with it. The problem you'll have with the Miata, and I don't know why, it's the single stupidest thing about owning this car. Mustangs, specifically S550 Mustangs, they love to pipe you and try to race you. And I don't understand that. That would be like me trying to foot race Usain Bolt. Look, I can run pretty well, but I'm not Usain Bolt. This car runs pretty well, but it's not a Coyote 5-liter. Don't waste your time piping at Miatas. We can't outrun anybody. Half the time, we can't outrun minivans if they really want. If a soccer mom had a Honda Odyssey Elite and she gave it the beans, I would be bang shifting just to hold my own pride. Let's just say buy a BMW M3. I wouldn't think. If you live somewhere like Greenwich, Connecticut, and you need to drive it year-round, you wouldn't buy a Miata if you needed it to baby, because this car does not baby. You wouldn't buy an Evo if you needed to pull a boat. And the same kind of goes right back to what I said in the beginning. In my opinion, you wouldn't buy a Ford Mustang if you wanted a pure sports car. You want an all-arounder? Hey, Mustang's a great car. But if you were like me and you always seen Miatas out, you couldn't scratch that itch. The fact that there's no other car available that really offers a Miata type experience. And that's what you need to ask yourself. What kind of experience are you trying to have? And the Miata, literally and figuratively, offers the Miata experience. That's all it does. It's perfect in that regard. This is the most perfectly imperfect car you could ever hope to own. But it does things like this real well. That's why you buy a Miata.